So anybody who's more of an old school admin, they remember the days before System D. They remember the days before we had the system journal, right, which is like a centralized logging. And in those days, we had var log, and they were all text files, right? Well, we still have var log, right? Now, I believe we still have var log because the system journal is configured to also write these logs. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Scott. Used to be we had like our syslog before that, and those would write these files, and there was a whole bunch of configuration and whatnot you could do to the syslog daemon. Now you do that stuff to the journal instead. All right. So first, I'm showing you the directory or the files that are inside of var log, but there's a couple that I wanted to point out. The first of them is var log messages. This is like the core general console messages that come out of your Linux kernel, right? So messages, I just catted the file and it's showing us the general log. This is very similar to the general system journal. In fact, you'll see a lot of the stuff that's in the general journal inside of var log messages, right? That's by design. That's how it's supposed to be. All right. Now, we've also got logs for DNF, which can be helpful if you're trying to figure out when a change happened to a system. You can use the DNF history feature as well, but you can also do tail instead of cat. Today's going to be fun. I have a band-aid on my index finger. All right. So tail the DNF log, dnf.log here. Autocomplete. So you can see here, like messages that have come out of DNF show up in here, right? So you can see there was an upgrade done here. You can see the date right there. This was actually today. So this must have happened during the provisioning of this particular system, right? So you can see that it updated these packages. And it's a good way to look back and see, did something change on the system? Who did it? I guess it doesn't really show you who did it, but it shows you that packages had changed. And then you can dig deeper into the DNF history for more. Another great one is the cron log. Anything that runs through cron will show up in this log file. So if something happened at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're like, nobody was logged in at 2 o'clock in the morning, the cron log is a great place to look and see if that was just like an automated task that maybe went haywire, did something you didn't expect it to do, or did something that it was supposed to do and you just forgot. How many times has that happened, right? Boy, that backup job that ran and deleted stuff I thought maybe it shouldn't have. So you go from that panic moment of who got into my system and deleted stuff to, oh, that's just a poorly written script. Simple as that. Another good one is secure, right? And this is the security log or the login log. Who logged in at certain times, who changed certain things, SSH sessions, console log sessions, things like that. Even you can see here where we added some groups and whatnot, right? They all show up inside of the secure log. Scott, I see you unmuted.
Secure does a bunch of security related things. And I know we're going to get into how logs end up in certain files. Things like usermod sends a log that gets put into varlog secure by default.
Yeah, that's what I was just touching on right here. You see, user mod made this change. It made some group changes, right? So that ended up in the list there. One more I forgot to put on my list, but is also important: the audit log. I don't know if this gets touched on later in your demos, Scott, because I know you're going to be touching on audit D. I use this log most frequently for if there are SE Linux problems, right? The SE Linux denials and whatnot end up inside of this log. This log's kind of, if I remember correctly, it's not that pretty to read if I were to just tail it. Why are you looking at me like that, Scott?
They do end up here, but I would prefer to look at them in varlog messages because they show up there too. And there's
Well,
stuff.
if you're using SE Alert, SE
Yep.
Alert can read the audit and can actually generate you possible fixes for your SE Linux issues, which is what I've used it for most primarily. So I don't think those end up in varlog messages. Do they?
That's been my experience. It's either varlog message or varlog secure. I am shocked to find out that they also go to audit log.
I learned that during RHCE training. How do you not know that?
I use the ones in varlog messages and varlog secure.
One more thing I wanted to show you is there's a cool utility included with RHEL and other Linux distributions called Logger. Logger will let you write logs. If you're writing a shell script or if you're writing your own custom application and you just need bash to write something to the logs, you can use Logger to do it. And there's other ways to get that done, but Logger makes it really simple, right? So why not use it? So if I just did Logger something terrible, right? Now if I look in messages, it should show up at the end. Something terrible has occurred. And you can see right there that it tells me what process ID generated. Another cool thing you can do, remember I showed you that these logs are split out. Now, the way that happens is through this thing called facilities or priorities within the logging space of the kernel. You can tell a log what it's related to by specifying the logging facility that it has to write to. In the old days, there were like, I guess you called them rings, local 0 through local 7, and you would specify which ring your log had to go to. It's a little more dynamic than that nowadays. You can actually just kind of go by name. And that again comes down to what's defined within I guess it's within Journal D. I haven't dug that deep into where those are defined. But so with Logger, we can just set that facility. Let me clear the screen again. Remember, in Secure, it ended with, well, there's a test there from when I tested this before. But if I do a logger -p and then auth priv, there's a bunch of facilities here. You can look those up online. I don't have a list in front of me that I can show you. And then the priority, we're going to say this is a warning, right? And then we say, some secure event, right? Let me try to spell it right. And then if we tail secure again, there it is. Some secure event has occurred, right? And there it is in our logs. Really handy for if you need to put something in a log file, you've got a backup script that runs. Instead of you could just echo something into the log file, but then you lose all the formatting and the process ID and all that stuff. You use Logger and it automatically does all that stuff for you, which I think is pretty handy.
And Nate, you said the list of facilities,
Yeah,
they are in the Logger man page towards the bottom. There's like a whole list of all the different facilities.
there you go. All right, that's it for my critical path for today.